Hey, what's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Dreamers Pro Daily Recap, where we give you a recap of all of the hot topics that we covered that day. You can catch them in their long format and also catch it fully streaming for free on Apple Podcasts. Please make sure you like the video and sub to the channel. Also, we're going to be finally launching our exclusive Dreamers Pro community on the 27th of this month. If you guys want a one-time offer to secure a one-time 70% off deal, please make sure you go ahead and do that. But the only way for you to gain access to that, you got to be a part of the waiting list. Make sure you sign up to that. We have that pinned in the comments below. We have about 500 signups right now. If you want to be a part of that and get that 70% deal off, go ahead and check it out. Anyway, let's get into today's topic. This damn JJ Redick is back. I have come to the conclusion that I'm not going to be a fan of JJ. I just can't do it. I just cannot do it. It's like the Lakers were already pissing me off as a former Laker fan, but then they decided, you know what? How can I piss off? Like, what can we do to piss off some people a little bit more? You know what? Let's go hire JJ Redick and make him right. Like, this guy is just insufferable. Like, I cannot tolerate JJ Redick. JJ Redick, before he became the coach of the Lakers, was known for being one of the faces that contributed to the erosion of the reputation of players in the past. JJ Redick was one of them. He was one of the ones that went out there talking about Larry Bird and all of that. The game wasn't physical in the past, to the point where JJ Redick was being called up by Pantheon players, top 75 guys, and saying this guy is a clown. Bob Cousy called him out. Jerry West called him out. Dominique Wilkins called him out. Michael Cooper called him out. And a bunch of other people were like, yo, what is this dude on right now? He made it his business to trash players from the past. And it looks like even with his new position as a Lakers coach, he still is on that crusade to basically denigrate eras in the past. Now, as you guys know, we're having this robust conversation around the direction of the NBA game, the way it's being played with too many threes and blah, 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 blah. And JJ Redick decided, you know what? Let me chime in and give you guys my take on what's really going on here. And in typical JJ Redick fashion, he absolutely ended up pissing off everybody with his ridiculous viewpoints. So what happened? This morning I was just combing through the internet and I came across an article on fadeawayworld.net that said, JJ Redick blames NBA analysts and social media for the decline in viewership. And I'm like, we gotta talk about this clown today. So let's get into what this article had to say. JJ Redick became the latest to weigh in on the discourse surrounding the declining ratings for the NBA. Speaking to Sam Amick of The Athletic, Redick noted that the negative coverage surrounding the modern NBA, its players, and its structure is a big reason why viewership has decreased. He pointed out that if people are regularly told that the product is bad, they are not going to be inclined to tune in on television. I don't think we have done a good job of storytelling, of celebrating the game. If I'm a casual fan and you tell me every time I turn on the television that the product sucks, well, I'm not going to watch the product. And that's really what happened over the last 10 to 15 years. I don't know why it's not funny to me. Continues on. The game should be celebrated. The league is more talented and skilled than it was 18 years ago when I was drafted. That's a fact. There are more players that are excellent. There are more teams that are excellent. Redick also pointed out the criticism of the NBA during his playing days have been addressed in recent years, and the improvement of perceived flaws from that time were never celebrated. Instead, those in media have found new problems with the modern game and chose to aim their venom and vitriol to those aspects of the sport instead. I heard when I played, I don't know 4 or 5 years, why do we even play the regular season? We know who's going to be in the finals. Well, guess what? We have parity now, and we're not celebrating parity. We're not celebrating the fact that the Western Conference is loaded as it is. We're playing a Sacramento team tonight that's incredible, with incredible talent, and they've got a losing record of 13-4. It's not because they're bad. They're a bad basketball team. And then he continues on finally with his nonsense. We don't have anybody that's willing to step up to the facts that this is an awesome game and we should talk about it and celebrate it in a positive way. That doesn't mean we don't critique it. We should critique it, but we should celebrate it. Nobody's doing that, and people that have a small niche following on Twitter. And frankly, I would argue as well that everyone in our ecosystem pays too much attention to what is said on Twitter. And part of this whole ratings discussion is because people on Twitter are talking, okay, let's address this foolishness that JJ Redick just spewed all over the table. Okay, let's just go through this. First of all, JJ Redick said, I think we have not been doing a good job with storytelling. You need to expand on that. In terms of what? In terms of what? That's the first thing. The second thing, he said, the reality is, they're telling people that the game sucks. He says not fun. And then he goes, the game should be celebrated. The league is more talented and skilled than it was 18 years ago. That's a fact. How do you prove this? How do you prove this? Let me tell you the reason why some of us believe, or rather, why some of us are skeptical of this point of view. JJ is talking about the league is more talented than it ever was before. But yesterday, we just played an audio of Kevin Garnett speaking to the commissioner, Adam Silver, who openly admitted that if we had the same restrictive rules, like lack of freedom of movement, hand checking, players that could be physical with the offensive players like Stephen Curry would not be able to showcase their talents. They would be restricted, and therefore they would not be as great as they are today. So if the rules are more lax, how can you then say that that the players are more skilled today when they're given more freedom? That's number one. Number two, how do you then explain the players that were excellent from the past, right? They're played under a more restrictive NBA. How do you quantify this? He says the players today are more talented. In what aspect? Let me give you guys some data here. JJ is talking about players are more skilled today. Teams are taking more threes, but the NBA is only scoring about 2 more points per game or down 2 more points per game on average. How do you explain this? Let's go through this, because JJ Redick is a damn liar. And we gotta get the record straight. NBA 3-point shooting over the years. Okay, because this dude be lying. I think he just be up there twerking it up, making up stories, and just basically inventing reality. So let's go over some of the data here. JJ is talking about players today are more talented than ever before. And when people like this say this, they usually like to point to the 3-point shooting. Let me give you guys some information here, because just to prove that JJ Redick is just up there saying a bunch of nonsense. All right. In the 1990s, teams were attempting 11.4 threes a game, right? They were making 34.7% of those threes. In the 2000s, teams were attempting 15.7 threes per game. They were making 35.6%, so that's an improvement, one percentage point. In the 2010s, teams were attempting 23 threes a game. Guess what they were shooting? 35.6%. In the 2020s, teams are attempting 35 threes a game and making 36.1. That's half of a percentage point. But if you leave it to jokers like JJ Redick, they'll tell you that these guys are the most skilled players that we have ever seen in our lives. Meanwhile, the data shows that their shooting, in terms of their skill, it's more or less the same. More or less the same. The averages haven't moved over the last 30 years. The only difference in terms of an improvement has been about a 1% improvement. But JJ Redick is saying that players today are more skilled than ever before. Okay, fantastic. Let's go through, because when people like this say this, I want to look at, okay, who are the top guys in the NBA today? Right? Let's look at the 2020s. Who are the top guys that we can say, man, you know what? These guys are really out of this world. Let's look at them. You have De'Aaron Fox. You have Anthony Davis. You have Jason Tatum. You have Anthony Edwards. You have Luka Doncic. You have Nikola Jokic. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo. Who else am I missing? Ja Morant. And maybe a few other people that I'm not thinking about right now. Maybe an SGA, of course. SGA, he's there as well. And then maybe some other names that are Joel Embiid. Okay, let's throw in Joel Embiid. You're like, wow, these are a talented group of players, right? Okay, let's look at the generation before that. Let's look at the 2010s. Let's see what kind of names pop up in the 2010s. Let's see who we got. You got Stephen Curry. You got Kevin Durant. You got Russell Westbrook. You got D Rose. You had Blake Griffin. You had I just can't think of some of the players right now. You had Paul George. You had Kawhi Leonard. You had James Harden. So I'm giving you great players from every generation. And I don't think anybody in their right mind can say that the first group that I named in the 2020s are way more advanced than the groups that I just named in the 2010s. Let's go to the era before that. You had Kobe Bryant. You had Shaquille O'Neal. Kobe's better than all these dudes I just mentioned. Anyway, you got Kobe Bryant. You had Shaq. You had D. Wade. You had Vince Carter. You had Paul Pierce. You had Kevin Garnett. You had Allen Iverson. You had Tracy McGrady. Who else? You had Ray Allen. You had Tim Duncan. Right? I just gave you 10 guys. We're going from era to era to era, and I'm willing to make an argument. You had LeBron James. I think I said LeBron James. And I'm willing to say players 20 years ago, that group I just mentioned, with all of those guys, Steve Nash and all of them, were actually better. And I think you can actually argue that quite easily than the first group I mentioned. Let's go back to the era before that, because he said an 18-year window. So JJ Redick with his crazy behind is actually talking about players from the 2000s. Let's take it one generation back. You had the 90s. You had Patrick Ewing. You had Karl Malone. You had John Stockton, who leads the NBA in all-time in assists. I mean, I'm just saying. That's who he is. And arguably, pound for pound, the most durable NBA player ever in John Stockton. I mean, I'm just saying. You had, did I mention Charles Barkley? You had Akeem Olajuwon. You had Scottie Pippen. You had Clyde Drexler. Oh, you had a guy. What was this guy's name? Damn, I can't remember it. Michael Jordan. You had Larry Bird. You had Magic Johnson. So when we look at the top tier players from every single decade, how can JJ Redick open his ass to then turn around and say players today are clearly more talented and then say at the end, that's a fact? Based on what? If you actually paid attention to the list, the players, as I was going backwards, were better. Now let's look at athleticism. You have players like Ja Morant, who's a freak athlete today. You have players like Anthony Edwards, who's a freak athlete. You have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's a freak athlete. Who else can I think of right now? Those are the top 3 guys that come to mind right now. Let's look at the era, but let's look at the group before that. You had Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin was as athletic as anybody we're watching playing basketball today. He was as athletic as anybody we're watching play ball today. You had Jason Richardson. You had Derrick Rose. You had Russell Westbrook. You had LeBron James. You go to the era before that. The greatest dunker in NBA history, Vince Carter. You had Kobe Bryant. You had LeBron James. You had Dwayne Wade. You had Allen Iverson. You had Shaq. You had Tracy McGrady. You had Paul Pierce. You had all of these top of the shelf athletes. You go to the decade before, and it just keeps going on and on and on and on. But if you listen to jokers like JJ Redick, they'll have you thinking you're watching the best thing since sliced bread. This is why so many people don't like JJ Redick. He's talking about the negative coverage of the game when he was one of the jokers that was tarnishing eras of the past, and he was the one that was alienating fans of all of these players. It was him. And he got the nerve to turn around with his arrogant ass and then say, oh, well, you know, it's the way the game is being covered and it's a negative thing that these people are saying. You was part of it. You was part of it. So to sit up here and act like you're holier than thou and I'm above it all because I'm JJ Redick and I went to Duke and I think I'm better than everybody else. You can never take JJ Redick serious. He's criticizing people for the very thing that he did. Why do you think so many Pantheon greats were calling him out? So many. JJ was talking about the 90s wasn't physical. Dominique Wilkins turned around and said, this dude is a bozo. They said he's a bozo. But y'all want to look up to JJ Redick because he looks smart or whatever the hell it is, and y'all want to believe what he's saying. And now he going to sit up here and talk about, well, as you know, it was the way the game was being covered before, the negative things that we're saying. And you tell people that players today for the last 15 years the game is bad, then what you think they're going to believe? And by the way, all those players in the past, they couldn't even dribble the ball properly. That's JJ Redick. But we supposed to take him seriously. This dude is not serious. He's not serious. He is very much, he is also part of the problem. But he's acting like as if he's above it all, as he usually does. This dude is a total clown. And I said it. And you know who else said it? The NBA greats said it. So if I don't know basketball and I'm calling him a clown, they know basketball and they still call him a clown. And I agree with them. Let me just put it that way. I agree with them. We must never take JJ Redick seriously. Never. And by the way, we're going to be launching an exclusive Dreamers Pro community very, very soon. And if you want to be a part of it to ensure that you receive a one-time offer, please make sure you join the waiting list. We have over 300 people signed up already. So if you want to receive that one-time offer, only the people on the waiting list, please make sure you go ahead and do so. So y'all know the talk of the town right now is the fact that ratings are down in the NBA. There have been complaints about the way the game's being played. There have been complaints about the load management. There have been complaints about the general attitude of the NBA towards its fans. They've talked about the players' disposition these days. And funny enough, yesterday I just zoomed in quickly to Gil's Arena's panel. And I saw like the first maybe for 2 minutes of this. They were talking about this. And I forgot the female guest that's always there. I forgot her name. But she was there. And she was like, yeah, people don't know what they're talking about. It's no big deal. People don't understand the numbers and what's going on here. People just want something to talk about. Well, I guarantee you very soon they're going to be changing their entire tune because LeBron James has said something now, and all of them are going to be like, well, now that LeBron says it, now that I think about it, there may be a problem after all. Well, folks, LeBron James is making news today. Now, why? As you guys know, the Lakers beat the Sacramento Kings yesterday, but going into that game, he was speaking to members of the press, and they were talking about a bunch of things, longevity, blah, blah, blah. But then they got to the point where they were discussing the state of affairs of the NBA game. Now, LeBron James, he really knows how to work the media, and from time to time, he'll say one thing and then say another thing that he knows is going to make a lot of headlines. And LeBron said, it's not just that the All-Star game has a problem. He's like, the entire game itself of basketball really needs to be re-examined and looked at because the thing doesn't really seem to be going in the right direction right now. I was like, well, looks like the face of the NBA is deciding to enter the chat and chime into this. So I'm like, this is something we definitely have to discuss today. So what we want to do is play exactly what LeBron had to say about the current state of affairs of the NBA. And then we're going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to what LeBron James had to say here.
Where are you at on the All-Star game and the changes in the debate about what it would take to?
Yeah, I don't really have where I'm at about it. I mean, it had to change. Something had to change. No, I did not.
Okay.
I was not part of the committee.
He said he didn't like it. I think Book did too.
Everyone has their own opinion.
It's pretty unorthodox. Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, in a sense. But I don't know. I don't really have a. We see when we get there. It's different. Obviously, anytime you make some type of change, it's going to be some buck back. I don't know. I mean, I have my ideas of what could possibly work.
It's kind of why, I'd love to get.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
But like coming out of Indiana, when you saw the reaction,
we got to do something. Obviously, the last couple of years have not been a great All-Star game that Sunday night. But I mean, listen, it's a bigger conversation. It's not just the All-Star game. It's our game in general. Our game is. It's a lot of is being shot. Mm-hmm. So it's a bigger conversation, just the All-Star game.
What do you want to see?
I can't do that today. Not in Sacramento. Sacramento, I love you guys, but you can't get you this conversation today. It's just a bigger conversation.
So you heard what LeBron James had to say. What are my thoughts on this? I think LeBron is cognizant of the issues that exist. And I think the reason LeBron is able to speak from this perspective is because LeBron James is from the old school. People seem to forget LeBron has been in the NBA for 22 years. All right, 22 years. LeBron came into the NBA when the 2003 draft. So LeBron came into the NBA when they were still playing defense. He's aware of the 90s and how the game was played then. And you can see the evolution of the game over time. LeBron has been here to witness it. Now, the irony in his comments, which I thought was just very, very ironic, was him saying the amount of damn threes that are being taken in the game today. There are too many damn threes. The irony of this is that LeBron himself is someone that takes a lot of threes as well, right? He's someone else. He's a player that is also known for attempting a lot of threes. This season, he's attempting 5.6. Last season, he attempted 5.1. But the season prior to that, he was attempting 6.9. And the season before that, he attempted a career high 8 3-pointers a game. 8. That's to a quarter. So LeBron, I think, is aware of the problem that exists in the NBA, but he's also part of the product. So he himself has to adapt within it. The same thing that Joe Mazzulla said. He said, I'm very much as part of the problem as anybody else. Because the Boston Celtics, I think, on certain nights, they take about 50 3-point shots in a game, which is crazy. That's over 10 threes a quarter, right? A quarter. It's madness. So I think that LeBron is aware of the problem. He's also aware of the fact that he's part of the problem, but he understands that something needs to change. And the fact of the matter is, something does need to change. The way the game is played needs to change. They are overemphasizing the 3-point shot and getting to the free throw line, and there's no balance anymore. In the past, when you looked at certain players in the past, marquee names, these guys were good at a myriad of things. And they all had different games to a certain extent. AI's game was peculiar to him. Carmelo's game was peculiar to him. LeBron's game was peculiar to him. Kobe's game was peculiar to him. Shaq's game was peculiar to him. Westbrook's game was different. KD's game was a little bit different. So stylistically, there was something different. But what ended up happening was, because the NBA is a copycat league, they copied the Golden State Warriors. And the Golden State Warriors weren't the only ones that did it, because Mike D'Antoni played a role in that with the Houston Rockets. He started it off really with the Phoenix Suns, and now the entire game is run amok. Whereas one 3-point shooting contest, obviously the nerds have infiltrated the building, and they've now turned this thing into some math equation. And the problem is, the NBA is an entertainment league. You're here to entertain people. And I think that these guys are not factoring the entertainment value of it all. They forgot all about the entertainment. And when people aren't watching, that says something. I want you guys to bear this in mind. The NBA has lost about 48% of his audience in 2013. 48%. Now, that was the year Kobe tore his Achilles. Is there any correlation between that? I don't know. It's just a little strange that the year Kobe tore his Achilles was the year we started to witness a rapid decline in viewership. But also, there's other things that have contributed to it. You also have to look at certain companies trying to infuse politics into sports. It's something that doesn't work. Politics and sports don't work. It does not work. It don't work. It don't work. You cannot mix the two. You just cannot. If we've tried it. Before we open our other channel called Here's What I Think with me, Charles Tabansi. If you guys are not subscribed to that, if you're interested in that, you can check that out. Here's What I Think is the name of it. We tried to broach some political videos on our channel just to see if we could do it, and they would lose subs like crazy, regardless of what we're talking about, because it was so polarizing, and that was a mistake. Let's just call it what it is. It was a mistake. I think the NBA deciding to take a political stance was a mistake because it alienated a lot of people. A lot of people, whether you like it or not. And to me, I think it's something that they should have had the foresight to be able to kind of predict. Like, you just don't do it. It's not smart business. Regardless of your political affiliation, you could have been had Republican views, and it would have turned off people on the left and Democrats. You could have had vice versa, in which they had Democratic views on ESPN in particular, and it turned off people, so you lose your audience. And the question is, why would you do that? Why would you risk that? But that's the risk that they took, and I believe that that's also playing a role. So there's a lot of things going on. A lot of things about style of play, load management, the amount of apathy that players have towards the game, the NBA itself, and then some of these other things that are plaguing the game. So there's a lot of things to talk about, and I think LeBron James is 100% on the money there. And by the way, we're going to be launching an exclusive Dreamers Pro community very, very soon. And if you want to be a part of it to ensure that you receive a one-time offer, please make sure you join the waiting list. We have over 300 people signed up already. So if you want to receive that one-time offer, only the people on the waiting list, please make sure you go ahead and do so. JJ Redick is pissing me off. If you see me looking pretty hot, like heated, it's because I came off from another show where I just went off. So this is going to lead into that. So I'm keeping that same energy with it. As you guys know, JJ Redick is one of the biggest jokers that we got going in the NBA today. It's not even a question about it. It's not even a question about it. Y'all know the number one talk right now in the NBA over the last 2 weeks is the direction that the NBA is going in. That the fact that we're watching the league actually fall apart. Ratings are down 48% over the last decade. But JJ Redick decided that he wanted to step into the fray and explain to us the real reason why ratings are down. I want to quickly read from a fadeaway article and highlight some of the comments from this joker here. It starts off with the headline: JJ Redick blames NBA analysts and social media for decline in viewership. Can you even imagine? Let's continue on. JJ Redick became the latest to weigh in on a discussion surrounding the declining ratings for the NBA. Speaking to Sam Amick of The Athletic, Redick noted that the negative coverage surrounding the NBA, its players, and its structure is a big reason why viewership has decreased. He pointed out that that if people are regularly told that the product is bad, they're not going to be inclined to tune in on television. I think we have done I don't think we've done a good job storytelling of celebrating the game. If I'm a casual fan and you yell it and you tell me every time when I turn on the television that the product sucks, well, I'm not going to watch the product. And that's really what happened over the last 15 years. I don't know why. It's not funny to me. So it's not that the game is bad. Is that JJ is saying is that the fact that people are telling him that the game is bad. So basically he wants you to lie to him. And fans are too stupid to understand that they're watching a bad product. So therefore, if people said positive things about the game, even though it sucks, people are now going to believe that, oh, the game is good. Because you know why? Because JJ Redick is smart and everybody else is stupid. That's the only reason why he thinks that this line of thinking would fly. I continue on. The game should be celebrated. The league is more talented and skilled than it was 18 years ago when I was drafted. That's a fact that he cannot substantiate. There are more players that are excellent, whatever that means. There are more teams that are excellent, whatever that means as well. I heard when I played, I don't know, for 4 or 5 years, well, why don't we even play the regular season? We know who's going to be in the final. Well, guess what? We have parity now. And we're not celebrating the parity. We're not celebrating the fact that the Western Conference is loaded as it is. We're playing a Sacramento team tonight that's incredible, with incredible talent, and they got a losing record of 13-14. It's not because they're bad. They're a bad basketball team. Pause the video right there. JJ Redick cannot be taken seriously. This dude is not serious. The NBA, for the last 20 years, the toughest conference has always been the West, JJ Redick. It ain't because you started coaching in the West or in the last 5 years. Go look back and look at what the Western Conference was when Kobe played 15 years ago. They were teams that had a 50 record as the 8th seed. As the 8th seed. 7th seed with a 50 record. That's the reason why Kobe has beat more 50-win teams than anybody in the sport, and he beat more 50-win teams in a 2-year window than Magic Johnson did in his entire career. So the West has always been good, but he wants to make it seem like as if all of a sudden the West, it's been good. Let's continue on. This joker continues on. He finally says, we don't have anybody that's willing up to step up to the fact that it is an awesome game and we should talk about it and celebrate it in a positive way. That doesn't mean we don't critique it. We critique it, but we should. And then he started talking about people on Twitter. So, JJ Redick, the savant himself, has told us that the NBA game is really good, and the problem is that we don't talk about how good it is. Instead, we spend more time criticizing. Do you know why? Because JJ Redick is that damn smart. He's that damn smart, and everybody else is that damn dumb because we apparently cannot understand that this is a good game, but he does. So we're all wrong, but he's right. But we have a problem. Because it seems like someone who he coaches in the name of LeBron James actually believes that the NBA does have a problem. That in fact that there needs to be a robust conversation about the direction of the game. So what we want to do is want to play exactly what LeBron James had to say just yesterday about the state of affairs of the All-Star game and the NBA, and I'm going to come back and continue on the show. Take a listen to LeBron James here.
Where are you at on the All-Star game and the changes in the debate about what it would take to?
Yeah, I don't really have where I'm at about it. I mean, it had to change. Something had to change. No, I did not.
Okay.
I was not part of the committee.
He said he didn't like it. I think Book did too.
Everyone has their own opinion.
It's pretty unorthodox. Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, in a sense. But I don't know. I don't really have a. We see when we get there. It's different. Obviously, anytime you make some type of change, it's going to be some buck back. I don't know. I mean, I have my ideas of what could possibly work.
That's kind of why. Yeah, I'd love to get.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that.
But like coming out of Indiana, when you saw the reaction,
we got to do something. Obviously, the last couple of years have not been a great All-Star game that Sunday night. But I mean, listen, it's a bigger conversation. It's not just the All-Star game. It's our game in general. Our game it's a lot of being shot. Mm-hmm. So it's a bigger conversation, just the All-Star game.
What do you want to see?
I can't do that today. Not in Sacramento. Sacramento, I love you guys, but you can't get you this conversation today. It's just a bigger conversation.
So you heard what LeBron James had to say. So JJ Redick, I got a question for you. Since you know it all, who's right about this issue, you or LeBron? Does the NBA have a problem or does it not? Because LeBron James, who we can all agree quite easily that knows more basketball than you. We can all agree with this without any question. And he's saying that there are too many threes. He's also saying that we need to have a larger conversation around the game. But you're saying, no, the game is beautiful. It's not that we have a problem. It's that people are people saying it is bad is the reason it's bad. So JJ, who's right here? You or LeBron? Who's right? You or LeBron? Who is right? You or LeBron James? I'm going to go with LeBron James and everybody else. And all the other Pantheon greats that are saying it. Hell, even wannabe Pantheon greats, makeshift Hall of Famers are even saying that there's a problem with the game. You got players like Shaq saying there's a problem. You got players like Charles Barkley saying there's a problem. You got players like LeBron James saying it's a problem. You have so many other players, and then here comes JJ Redick. Here comes JJ Redick with his clipboard about to explain to all of us why we're all wrong and he's right. JJ Redick feels like now the competition in the West is tough, like as if it's never been tough. I'm lost. If JJ Redick knew the history, he would know that the West has always been a stacked conference. It's the reason most of the championships of the last 20 years came from the West. Mr. JJ Redick, count them. The Lakers have 5. The Warriors have 4. That's 9. The Spurs have 5. That's 14 right there. Then you have the Nuggets. That's 15. And then whoever else I'm not even remembering right now. You had the Heat that won 2. The Celtics that won 1. The Detroit Pistons that won 1. The Raptors that won 1. And who else won? That's about it. What does that say about the why do you think people are always making fun about the Eastern Conference, calling it the Leaston Conference? So the West has always been tough, but JJ Redick don't know that. He believes that now, because players are so skilled, that's why this dude is unreal. It's unreal. And it's not me saying, it's his peers saying, this dude is he's off his rockers. Let me give you a list of some of the people that think JJ Redick doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. What is it? Bob Cousy, Jerry West, Michael Cooper, Dominique Wilkins. Just to list a few. Just to list a few names that all say this dude don't know what the hell he's talking about. Kobe Bryant was talking about the decline of the game and how players weren't being bred to play the game properly. But JJ Redick is over here saying, no, that's not the issue. It's the way we're talking about it. I would listen to Kobe 1,000,000 out of 1,000,000 times before I listen to JJ Redick talk basketball. Who do you think knows more, Kobe or JJ Redick? Who do you think thought about this more in depth, Kobe or JJ Redick? Who do you think was smarter, Kobe or JJ Redick? Kobe was saying there's a problem that was starting at the grassroots level, which was the AAU. Kobe was actually going to the root of the problem, why we see it manifesting itself at the NBA level. But JJ Redick is saying, oh, no, there's no problem. The only problem is the negative coverage of it. Well, your boss, LeBron James, just said, no, we have a problem. So JJ, where do you stand? Who's right, you or LeBron? You or LeBron? I'm sure JJ is arrogant enough to believe it's him, and that's the problem. And by the way, we're going to be launching an exclusive Dreamers Pro community very, very soon. And if you want to be a part of it to ensure that you receive a one-time offer, please make sure you join the waiting list. We have over 300 people signed up already. So if you want to receive that one-time offer, only the people on the waiting list, please make sure you go ahead and do so. 2 days ago, we did a video centered on some comments that Malika Andrews had to make on the DeMar DeRozan podcast, and she was up there basically trying to turn herself into the victim. What was she talking about? She was talking about her reputation out there, where a lot of people seem to feel that, number one, she has something against men, and number two, she has something against black men in particular because of her coverage on the network at ESPN. She looks for a moment when these men are about to have probably a major move in their lives, and then she brings up some of the worst stories that she possibly could, and no one was off limits. Her most recent incident was when Josh Giddey was at the NBA draft. Not Josh Giddey, Brandon Miller was at the NBA draft, and she brought up an incident that he had in college, and we're just all sitting up here like, well, why are you doing this? Why exactly are you doing this? So she goes up on DeMar DeRozan's show, and she's talking about, I don't know why people say this about me. It's unfair, and it's hurtful, and people try to say this. And at the end of that, I was like, you must be joking. Who's taking Malika Andrews serious? She brought up the Brandon Miller situation, but when the Josh Giddey story came out, we could not find her. So in that show, I said a lot of things, but there was a particular story that escaped my mind. And I said to myself, I said, you know what? Today is the day we're going to broach this story because it's pertaining to someone that we're talking about quite a bit today. Who's JJ Redick? Now, some of you may not be aware of this fact, but JJ Redick, before he took the Lakers job, had some very, very strong accusations about him making some racial comments against Asians and blacks. But you would never know this because people like Malika Andrews and people on ESPN never covered it, but they say that the reason they decided to cover all of those other stories was because of journalistic integrity, and they had to give the audience the proper information. But I want to draw a quick contrast for you guys. I want to play a soundbite from Malika Andrews during that Ime Udoka scandal when the Celtics were looking to hire Joe Mazzulla, who I believe was an assistant coach, and promote him to the head coaching position. Malika Andrews went on ESPN First Take, on ESPN, and brought up a story of a domestic incident that Joe Mazzulla had in college, and decided that that was pertinent information for the audience because this was going to be the coach of the next coach of the Boston Celtics. For those of you who didn't hear Malika go out of her way to make sure that this information was public information, take a listen to her here.
And Woj, you reported that Joe Mazzulla will be the interim head coach here. You can see his resume on your screen. He's been a Celtics assistant coach the last 3 seasons after spending the previous 3 seasons at Fairmount State. And he played for West Virginia between 2006 and 2011, and now could become the NBA's youngest head coach at 34 years old. And we'd be remiss not to also mention that Mazzulla was arrested twice at West Virginia, once in 2008 for underage drinking and aggravated assault. He pled guilty, paid a fine, and then again in 2009 for domestic battery after an incident at Morgantown Bar. The domestic battery case never went to trial. It was settled in August of 2009. He paid a $100 fine and court costs, plus had to do 40 hours of community service. Now, that was 13 years ago. He settled and paid both fines. So, Woj, why are the Celtics choosing him as their next head coach?
Well, let's start with this. This is somebody whose character they really believe in, whose leadership they really believe in, and tactically, they think this is Joe Mazzulla has all the makings of a head coach.
So you heard Malika Andrews there. Joe Mazzulla is about to become the coach of the Boston Celtics, one of the most storied franchises in NBA history and in sports. So she thought that this was good information for the audience to understand who the Celtics were hiring. But it turns out Malika Andrews did not do that when it came to JJ Redick. And I want to read from some articles from the Huffington Post, BBC.com, and ESPN of some of the racial slurs that JJ Redick uttered and some of the accusations against him that people like Malika Andrews refused to touch. So let me read from a Huffington Post article. It says, new Lakers coach JJ Redick responds to black woman's claim that he called her N-word. Continues on. New Los Angeles Lakers head coach JJ Redick reportedly denied a claim that he called a woman who worked with the Duke basketball team the N-word. It never happened, a spokesperson from Redick's camp told TMZ Sports on Tuesday. Halima Nash, a Duke alum whose LinkedIn account says she paired the university's players with a sports mentorship program when Redick starred there in August, took to X after the ex-NBA player was introduced as the Lakers head coach. I've only been called the N-word to my face by a white man once in my life, and it was on the campus of Duke University while I was doing work with the basketball team, and today he was named the head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers. What a world. Nash, who runs a company that fosters job opportunities for Generation Z talent of color, elaborated on her viral post several hours later. For context, this was years ago, and I'm a believer that we all have space to grow, especially from our college level maturity, she wrote. We live in a world where those exchanges happen, and the intersection of race and privilege and lack of accountability all collide with that presser. Redick, a former college player of the year who played 15 seasons in the NBA, reportedly signed a 4-year deal despite a glaring void in his resume. And it says, I have zero coaching experience in the NBA. If he went on to say that. That's what that article said. That's from the Huffington Post, a reputable source. This is from the BBC. No, let's read from ESPN. Fans in China use polite booing for Sixers JJ Redick. Chinese fans booed Philadelphia 76ers shooting guard JJ Redick every time he touched the ball during Friday's preseason game at Mercedes-Benz Arena, harboring hard feelings for a racist slur he used several months ago. However, many fans applauded Redick's marksmanship as he scored 28 points on 10 shooting in the 76ers 121-14 win over the Dallas Mavericks. It was the most polite booing I've ever received in my life, Redick said. I mean, they booed and they cheered. We're mad, but we appreciate the way you're shooting the ball. Redick was one of several NBA players to record a video wishing NBA fans a happy Chinese New Year in February, a Chinese media company and partner of ESPN. Redick stumbled over his words in the video, and it sounded like he used an offensive term in reference to Chinese people. Redick apologized in February, explaining that he was tongue-tied, and reiterated his remorse Friday. Praising China's culture and energy, he said he expected to be booed and that Chinese fans are entitled to do so. He said, in quote, the whole thing, it was a very unfortunate situation, Redick said. I am deeply deeply remorseful for offending so many people. So JJ Redick said there he offended many people. The first story by the Huffington Post was published in June of 2024 by Ron Dicker. That's the name of the writer. And nobody covered this story. Not even Malika Andrews, the person that wants us to make us feel that she's some type of victim, that what we're doing to her is unfair. Malika Andrews went out of her way to point out the incident that occurred in Joe Mazzulla's life when he was in college, but she totally omitted all of these stories surrounding JJ Redick. She didn't even touch it. So the question is, why? Why was JJ Redick off limits, but Joe Mazzulla wasn't? Why are you always caught in these situations where people are questioning this about you? There's been incident after incident after incident after incident. My dear, at the end, if you're the common denominator, it's you. It is you. So when she sat up there and thought, oh, it's unfair. Oh, if there's a misunderstanding, what they're saying on the internet about music. And then DeMar DeRozan sat up there and actually listened to her. I don't even know how DeMar DeRozan had the strength to sit across Malika Andrews and have a conversation with her. This is Malika Andrews for you. She didn't even cover it. Now, what's the difference? The Celtics and the Lakers are both storied franchises. They're both hiring new coaches. But she decided, I'm going to cover Joe Mazzulla negative stories, but JJ Redick, no one is going to talk about him. That's Malika Andrews for you. You want to tell me Malika Andrews didn't hear about that? Of course she did. Of course she did. But she chose to just overlook it. But then wants to play like she's the victim. In the other video, I mentioned Sage Steele. Why I'm not a fan of Sage Steele. Some people were wondering. Sage Steele there was a time she was talking, I believe, about Barack Obama, and then because his father, I think, passed away or something. His father wasn't there. Where was his black father? And I'm like, I'm not feeling that. I'm not going to sit up here and let you try to paint black fathers as like some scum of the earth. I'm a black father, and I ain't going for it. I like my father. And there are a lot of black guys that are great fathers. And we don't need someone like Sage Steele out here perpetuating a stereotype. So I'm not a fan of her either. But it seems like ESPN seems to produce these people. It's almost as if, like, in the job description, do you hate black men? Yes, you can come work here. We have an office for you right there. We have an office space for you right there. To me, it's unbelievable. So anybody that thought that Malika Andrews was some type of victim or was falling for her crocodile tears, I'm not one of them. Y'all can keep her. And by the way, we're going to be launching an exclusive Dreamers Pro community very, very soon. And if you want to be a part of it to ensure that you receive a one-time offer, please make sure you join the waiting list. We have over 300 people signed up already. So if you want to receive that one-time offer, only the people on the waiting list, please make sure you go ahead and do so.